2.5 centuries. The United States military was established over 240 years ago in 1775. The history of gender identity in the military has rarely been explored or discussed until now.
As a candidate, Donald Trump promised to protect gay, lesbian, and transgender rights. The first nominee ever to make such a promise at a Republican convention.
July 26, 2017, marks the day that President Donald Trump sparked a fire across the nation and the world in just 3 tweets. The United States government, he said, will no longer accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. Andy Blevins is a Navy veteran and Army spouse. He serves as Director of Law and Policy at OutServe SLDN, an organization that provides free legal services for LGBT troops and veterans.
There have been anti-homosexual policies in the military since the Revolutionary War. In World War II is when we first saw policies come into fruition that distinguish between heterosexual and homosexual individuals.
America's rapidly growing Navy and Merchant Marine.
In the 1960s is really when the ban on service members with what was deemed gender issues really came into play.
Regina Hagee remembers this divisive era. She lived it.
It's hard to explain. I mean, without a common frame of reference, it's almost as if you had had to have been born in the mid-'60s and raised in the 60s and 70s to understand why you just didn't say these things out loud, right? I used to pray every night to wake up as a little girl, so I knew I was born in the wrong body. That's how I feel. I knew I should have been a girl. I didn't know what their word was, but yeah.
Regina joined the U.S. Navy in 1982, the same year the Defense Department declared that homosexuality is incompatible with military service. This commenced the Dark Ages.
Oh yeah, it was against the law. Yeah, no, you should be prosecuted for. You could go to Leavenworth if you made it to Leavenworth, because 9 times out of 10 you would be code red, and they would code red you, and you wouldn't make it home.
Today, the medical field understands gender dysphoria as a conflict between a person's assigned gender and the gender with which he, she, or they identify. But at the time, the DSM classified this as a mental disorder, characterized by sexual deviation. This means transgender Americans were already disqualified, It was simply illegal to be transgender and in the military.
And the chaplain said, well, why were you so emotional? I mean, you're a young man. I said, well, you know, I've got the emotions of a woman. And he said, oh, wait a second, what? And I got to tell you, it looks like my chaplain breached confidentiality and told my CPO, as there wasn't very long after that I was talked to about being homosexual. I was asked to prove that I was homosexual. Yeah. All they just put was honorable under general conditions, and at the bottom it said I was a burden to my command due to substandard performance or an inability to adapt to a military lifestyle. My father agreed for me to join the military at the age of 17, even signed for me because I was so eager to serve.
The term transgender was not included in any military policy relating to homosexuality. In Regina's case, they were confusing her sexual orientation with her gender identity, which was not on the radar at the time. Fast forward approximately 1 decade, and the struggle for LGBT service members becomes more complex with President Clinton's controversial policy that proved to be more harmful than helpful. It simply wasn't enough.
The policy I am announcing today is, in my judgment, the right thing to do and the best way to do it. It is right because it provides greater protection to those who happen to be homosexual and want to serve their country honorably in uniform, obeying all the military's rules against sexual misconduct.
Don't ask, don't tell. So don't ask, don't tell actually doesn't and never did apply to transgender people.
This is one of the major misconceptions. Don't ask, don't tell never protected transgender rights. And secondly, while some considered it to be a step in the right direction, as it allowed gay, lesbian, bisexual troops to serve, discharges actually increased under this policy. Continued harassment and interrogation forced out many service members. Krissa Farrell joined the U.S. Navy exactly 1 year after 9/11.
I decided to join the military when I found out my ex-wife was pregnant with our first kid. I've always had this strong compulsion to protect and provide for my family. To get around the don't ask, don't tell policy, we would use different arrows because, people wouldn't think twice about them. If they saw it, they'd be like, oh, it's just, somebody's design on something. So there were 3 arrows. The first arrow was a straight arrow. It indicated that you were heterosexual, but an ally. The second arrow was a curved arrow and indicated that you were either bisexual or pansexual or one of the other spectrums. And then the third arrow was a rainbow-colored straight arrow, and it indicated that the person was either a homosexual male or a lesbian.
Despite having a few allies on her ship, initially, Krissa's shipmates were not allowed in her home.
We'd hang out at work. I looked at it as a job, and when I got home, that uniform came off. I had a wig and whatnot, and I would get, dressed up, not sure. Put on the wig, clothes, makeup, and that was my home life. So figuring out how to be myself and be a member of the United States Navy was the hardest thing for me to do in the military. I essentially led 2 lives. two completely different, separate lives.
Folks, how are you? It's a good day. So this morning, I am proud to sign a law that will bring an end to Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
When news broke of the 2011 repeal, 12-year Air Force veteran and LGBTQ activist Shannon Scott was stationed in her home state of Montana with her friend Brian, a closeted gay man also in the military.
And I remember having just so much happiness for him because he didn't have to hide who he was anymore. He didn't have to lie about who he was or wasn't dating when the conversation came up. If there was a military function, he could bring his partner, his real partner, not his best friend. So I was really happy for him when Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed, but then another part of me was dying inside because I got to see him have all of these amazing things that I wanted so badly. He got to be himself and he got to serve. And he got to be proud of who he is and what he does. And I wanted that so much. And so I was so envious. It was really bittersweet for me to see somebody have everything that I wanted, and yet I couldn't have it myself.
A key concern about transgender military service is the use of military medical services to transition from one gender to another, including hormone replacement therapy and gender-affirming surgeries. However, many studies discredit this concern, stating that there is no compelling medical reason for the ban, but also that the ban itself is an expensive, damaging, and unfair barrier to healthcare access to the 15,500 transgender troops currently serving.
So basically, there should be no limitations based on a transgender service member's service strictly because of their transgender status.
Several members of Congress and community organizations then lobbied the DoD to lift the current ban on transgender military service. This led to a 2015 working group that filed a report to President Obama supporting the idea that transgender individuals should not be prohibited from serving in the U.S. military.
We're ending the ban on transgender Americans in the United States military. Effective immediately, transgender Americans may serve openly, and they can no longer be discharged or otherwise separated from the military just for being transgender.
I broke down and cried that day. I really did, because it was finally legal for me to wear my proper female uniform in public.
That to me was a day that I'll never forget. It was actually my birthday. And so it was such an amazing day, and I just thought, this is how it should be.
The Obama administration then created a one-year in-service guide walking through how transgender troops would transition into their true gender while still serving. Shannon Scott's service work within the LGBTQ community gave her an opportunity to go over the directives that had come down from President Obama in Washington, D.C.
Having the unique experience of both having served for over a decade and being transgender, I thought that they did an outstanding job of really balancing the needs of our armed forces and our duty and our objectives out there in the field to get the work done that we need to get done, but also be respectful and accommodating and caring to the transgender people in the military and serve them in the way that they've earned with their healthcare benefits. 1
year later, everything changed. The day before openly transgender people could officially enlist in the military, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis delayed the Obama-era plan by 6 months. This move gave the Pentagon time to potentially discharge transgendered troops currently serving, although Secretary Mattis stated a different reason for the extension. And that was just the beginning.
Today, a sudden reversal. The president surprising even his own top advisors with a major change in military policy announced via Twitter.
Yeah, I was getting ready to come to school. And I thought, God damn, why did we get such a man that my commander-in-chief hates me? And that's how I reacted right like this. I mean, I finally got used to the idea that I could wear my uniform in public with pride, my female uniform, at public events.
The only thing that came to mind when he announced the ban over Twitter was, I was like, you could have handled this so much better than just pumping this bigoted crap out onto Twitter for everyone to see. You're making so many people a target right now. And it's not a joke. And you're supposed to be our president. You're supposed to be the commander-in-chief. And you're not acting like one.
President Trump subsequently released a policy memo that affected the accessions, retention, and medical health of our transgender service members. So he was basically saying transgender service members cannot serve in our nation's armed forces because they cost too much, because they impede unit morale, and because they cannot be worldwide deployable. Unfortunately for President Donald Trump, he seems to be forgetting the 134,000 transgender veterans that have already served and the 15,500 transgender service members that are currently serving. So these really aren't issues.
In fact, a DoD-commissioned study estimated that transgender-related medical care would cost only about $8 million annually, a mere 0.04% of its $6 billion healthcare budget. This total comes out to be 22 cents per person per month.
And really, it's less than what the Department of Defense currently spends on erectile dysfunction medication.
That's right. The DoD spent $40 million on Viagra and $80 million total on erectile dysfunction medication last year alone.
To compare the cost of Viagra at $84 million to that of even the most aggressive estimates of $8.4 million and say that it's just too much, I think you're looking at cutting the wrong end there. No one has to leave the military because they have to buy their own Viagra.
But what about military readiness and unit cohesion? Well, transgender people have been serving openly in the military since June 2016. Other parts of the world are dealing with the same issues. So far, studies have revealed no evidence that allowing open transgender service members to serve affects military readiness or unit cohesion. Trump's subsequent tweets triggered court challenges by advocates for open transgender service. Between October 30th and December 23, 2017, 4 separate district courts issued an injunction, and a federal court overruled Trump's ban. It seems that the open service policy spearheaded by the Obama administration finally sees the light of day. However, the fight is far from over. On March 23, 2018, the White House released a new policy memo allowing some transgender troops to continue serving, but keeping in place tight restrictions that are worse than Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In short, the government now states that you can serve in the military if you say you will stop being transgender. Today, under President Trump, we live in a dynamic, constantly changing situation. The battle for all transgender rights will continue to go back and forth for the foreseeable future. More than ever, transgender recruits and active service members need allies who will take action.
All too often, constituents don't think that their calls or their letters or their emails matter. No, those are exactly what matter. So if you're out there living your life thinking that's terrible that all of these people are now going to lose their careers after giving so much, it is terrible, but there's something you can do.
If these stories inspired you to learn more about open transgender military service, the list of organizations below will help you stay in the know and meet other allies. Why shouldn't everyone who wants to serve have that right? Is that not the goal of our military? To defend our country in order to preserve freedom and equality for all? After all, they have dedicated their lives to protecting that exact right. Freedom.